Right, and now I have the great honor to announce one of our regulars as a speaker. I'm very, very happy that even in this year, with all its, its lows and deep lows, we have Sandra Ziegler with us. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Claudia. Sandra, you are going to talk to us about Corona and its dark sides, also in the sphere of domestic violence and stalking and so on. And yes, as we said, we are happy to take your questions through the streaming website, the button Fragen stellen, ask questions, or via Twitter and Mastodon using the PW20 hashtag. And now I'm handing over to Sandra, and I'm very much, afraid and looking forward to what you will have to tell us. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you for this great introduction. And thanks for making it possible for me to join you again this year. It's always a great honor to speak to you at your event, and I'm happy to do that this year again. And today we will talk about Corona and its shadow, domestic violence, stalking, and a rollback of the sexes, because we all, in the Corona context, we've experienced a lot. Claudia, you've mentioned the lows and the deep lows, and we all don't know if the deepest lows have been reached yet. There could be a lot ahead of us still. And particularly on that background, we should be looking at the shadows, particularly those that have been a bit invisible until now, although there are phenomena that are interesting to look at, even and that pose big social challenges without having reliable numbers yet. And therefore, I would like to view from the criminal psychological perspectives to phenomena that Corona has strengthened or increased. And first, I will talk a bit about myself so that you all know why I am dealing with this. I am a criminal inspector who is no longer in service. I used to be working for the criminal police in Vienna and investigated serious crimes, so shootings, attempted murder and manslaughter. And in that context, I had a lot to do with domestic violence and other forms of what we should call criminal transgressions. And that has tied me so much, has interested me so much that I wanted to know more, and that made me decide that as a criminal investigator, I could not do enough to protect the victims, which is why I funded the security agency called SOS Stalking. And I am now a co-founder of that agency. That's what I work as. And we are protecting people from stalking nationally and internationally. I also worked for the Judiciary Committee of the German Parliament. That was a great honor. Had an influence on the stalking law there, and I work as a personal coach as well, because I believe that personal strengths are important. Correction for my translation. Our speaker used to work in Berlin, not Vienna, I think. Now, I think that many of you are sick of hearing this word, Corona. We don't hear anything else these days. And Corona is exactly the thing that caused what we call a bifurcation. That is the time when the future just changes direction. And Corona brought about a phenomenon that we have not known in this kind of civilization. We've seen economic restrictions. The whole of the economy worldwide was almost stopped for a while. That has been unprecedented. And we can say that every person in this world has been affected in some way, either directly or indirectly, but it affects all of us because we are all concerned, some of us more than others, but all of us in their own way is part of the solution as well, which is why we have to deal with this. And at the same time, things have changed in our lives that really mean that we have to say that the world we have known before Corona doesn't exist anymore. And even after Corona, it will not return. Our future has clearly changed direction, and that involves all the dark sides, but all the opportunities and potentials. And I'm pretty convinced that we will be able to uncover new potentials, and that we can say that we have learned a huge lot as a society too. At the same time, we have to deal with phenomena that we have to keep in focus, especially now, because the numbers are rising again, and we are approaching the next lockdown, whichever form it will take. But the numbers clearly indicate that there's a lot ahead of us, especially in the winter months. And on that background, we have to deal with the dark sides. Right. So what does Corona do with us? First of all, Corona causes stress on all levels of society. Our whole society, our economy has been turned upside down. So many people and parts of the economy are affected. Many people are on reduced working hours or have lost their job completely. Others have small children at home and have to organize childcare.
And many people are in quarantine at home, whatever that means in the particular moments, but all of us are in certain new and strange situations, and that also brings a lot of restrictions in our personal interactions and relationships. And especially in the last few months, there have been a lot of people who had to die alone, and that is a huge restriction. If it's just, all of us have to dial it back a little and we can talk a little less, but we really have to be careful and be very restricted and accept the situation that changes our normal life, how we knew it. It got changed completely. And that's not only a little stress, but sometimes it's really about our existence, the very core of our lives. And that also means that a lot of people are facing very extreme challenges that they might not have known like that before in their life. And that also means that they or we don't have solutions that we can reuse, that we learned before, but we all have to come up with new solutions to this, and we have to collaborate on this. So it's a topic for the top politics, but also for each one of us individually and privately. And so for some of us, it's easier, for others, it's more difficult. And there have been studies for exactly this topic. For example, the Hans Böckler Foundation, they had a questionnaire, and the results, they are manifold, but I took out the most important ones that I found most interesting, especially for the social cohesion in our community. And we can say Corona or COVID affects parents the most harshly. So single parents are really affected by this. 51%, more than 51% are very affected by that. 48% of parents say the same thing. That's, I think, also a very high number. And 38.8% of people without kids also say that. So I also think that that's an interesting number that you can see in this context and have to see in this context. So especially when in the household there are children below 14 years, we say that it's a very special, challenging situation. But we also have to say, when we now look at Corona and the sexes, that, yeah, the challenges that we are facing, especially mothers are facing a lack of daycare. So when we are now seeing that we have an income of up to 2,000 euro per household, then mostly the women, they take a step back, and for the children, they take a leave from the work. It's 19% of men and 31% of women. And when we are talking of income between 2,000 to 3,200, it's even more women. It's 1% higher for women and 1% lower for men. And above of 3,200, there it's only 24% of women and 15% of men. So especially where a low income or a middle income is in the family, there the women, they step back in their own interests and their own careers. And that, of course, means that the family income will take a dip. But it also means, in the short term, that the families need to master the situation that the family income will still be enough. Mostly, it's basically the man who just has to, who basically earns more. So yeah, equal pay gaps are still a topic here, and that gets increased in the current situation. So women earn even less and men earn even more. So this earning gap, it's growing again. And now you could say, of course, well, that's just in the short term. And the families, they just work it out that way. But in the long term, that also has, it will change the situation in the long term. So we as a society, we are getting into a situation where we are losing our winnings that we already had in our fight for equality, and we are losing those early wins. So women are taking a step back, and calculated on their lifetime, women will earn less. And especially if now a relationship breaks, they are in a weaker position because of that. And that's a very bad basis for future development. So we have to take that into account in everything. And now we come to the first topic that is important for criminal applications or criminal aspects. And if we now see on the one side that we are looking at families that are especially challenged because of Corona, especially both existentially but also financially, but also in their everyday to-day life, that taking care of sick people and everything and of children, it's mostly done by women. That's a lot of stress. And of course, where it was difficult before, it might have been difficult before Corona, where one or the other conflict was in the family even before, or maybe somebody wanted to break up even before, that now can also lead to an even more difficult situation where it becomes increasingly difficult. So we don't have any strong numbers yet, but we have the violence protection ambulance in Berlin that works all over Germany, and they are saying that right now we have about 30% increase in cases, and especially for Berlin and Hamburg, we can say that around 30% increase. And that clearly shows that the situation at home that could be compensated if both partners were working and had their contacts and had their social life and could balance out the work they have in the family, that's breaking away. And the situation that might have been difficult before, that can now really escalate. We also don't have any numbers yet about murders or manslaughters, but my prognosis would say that these are gonna increase this year. Yeah, stalking and Corona. Especially the topic of stalking is a topic that I really care about and that really moves me and that I'm close to. And I can say about my practical experience that the cases of stalking, the ones that we are taking care of right now, those got worse during Corona. So the stalking that already pre-existed, that increased, that got more intense and also happened more often. And we could also say that the lockdown and quarantine at home, of course, that changes people. And of course, that changes the people that are already caught in a stalking situation. So on the one side, the people that are affected by this, they told us that they suffered more. So the pressure was increased and they felt like they were being caught and couldn't escape. And before they could distract themselves, but that broke away. So the mental and emotional distractions broke away. And on the other side, of course, the stalkers became more brazen because, of course, they are not well as well. They have their own stress and they try to compensate that by stalking. And that's at least something we could observe now in our daily work. And I really assume that the cases will increase. And we can also say that with Corona, the usage of spyware obviously increased. And there is some speculation, of course. These are the first numbers we have, and we can interpret these as they are now. And the bigger picture will obviously come when the official statistics from criminal police will be published. But this is a clear indicator that stalking, especially under Corona, will increase, or did increase.
Stalking by Corona is another question, especially being under the attitude or view that stalkings have happened before. But now we have to ask, does Corona create additional stalking or makes it happen? And a lot of Mrs. Katerina O'Hara says from Munich, the Corona lockdown brings to the forefront a lot of psychological problems that have been around, and we learn a lot of new. That means, yes, stalking was originated by Corona, and I assume, that my personal opinion, we see a lot of people that take to the streets, completely unrelational. I mean, protesting against face masks. I think that's completely out of conception because they save lives. But there's a lot of fake news theories out there. And there's a lot of people out there saying Corona is basically fake news, and that is a sign in itself for psychological disturbances. I assume those people already had psychological problems before. Maybe you could even have seen them, but they held them in balance. And because we don't have a normal situation anymore, a lot of things happen with people, and psychological illnesses, psychic illnesses surface, and some of them can result in stalking as well. Let me take a short extension into stalking itself. What are we talking about? when we're talking about stalking, is a constant following a person against their expressed will in all conceivable matters. And when we're talking about legally, what must be available, what must happen so that it's legally stalking? How often, how long, and how intense are these attacks? These three elements will lead us to the conclusion: is this a stalking? And yes, we also need a clear proof that the contact has been broken, and we also must have some kind of impediment of personal life. The stalked person must be impedimented by the stalking. Then we're talking about stalking. But in Germany, we also in Germany, we don't have a real scientific definition of stalking, because stalking is not a particular act, but actually it's a lot of things that a standalone could be considered quite normal, but if they come in a big bulk, that means stalking is happening, and we must drudel up this to come to a deeper understanding of this phenomenon. To the criminal psychologist, we have a person that is fixed and very strongly emotionally and psychological related, and actually it's been that they themselves cannot explain why they do that, and sometimes the stalkers themselves don't have a clear explanation, a logical explanation of that. And on the other hand, the stalker themselves are so impedimented, feel strong pain, and are so fixated on the topic, and that usually leads, or that very often leads, that they start pulling in all kind of people from their surrounding, because their pain and their problems, but people from the outside cannot see why this is happening, and they start fixing up that this strong emotionality permits stalkers to take in a lot of people with their gain their sympathy and gain their support, and sometimes you can come into such a situation, you can become instrumental with stalking, and that makes stalking so dangerous, in my opinion. Now, stalkers loses. If somebody really stalks, it can happen that many points or many elements of his usual personal life that has stabilized him, it could be his work or his friends, or they sort of become less important, because stalking more and more becomes more, and the focus is more and more on the stalking process, and the stalking person, the stalker, will start slacking in work, stopping contacting his people. This is why it's very, very difficult to stop people from stalking. At the same time, stalkers have a terrible, vivid imagination. They have so many ideas. There's a lot, invest such a creativity in the problem, that it's very difficult sometimes to actually recognize the stalking. Oh, for instance, somebody orders a lot of stuff via the internet. Somebody might take up the digital identity of somebody else, or it takes up elements of his appearances in social media, or then he will put out rumors uh, at, 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 at the workplace or with authorities. I mean, the creativity of stalkers is unrefrained, and sometimes it takes years before you realize what's happening. And in the beginning, it's sort of a little oops here and a little oh there, and it only months and sometimes years later, suddenly realize, hey, this is all of this is only one person that is following me, and suddenly they realize they are being stalked. This is one of the reasons why we still don't have a straightforward and functional definition of stalking. And a lot of people come back to me, actually, I never realized I was stalked. Only now that you tell me that I'm realized. And a lot of damage has been done already without being noticed. One of the big problems with stalking is to realize that it's happening and to identify it, and then only can you start acting. And what's most important is that the capability of feeling insulted of the stalkers. And usually, beginning of a stalk is a harm and a pain, an insult. It could be a breakup or some emotional stress. It's such a strong impetus that this is when the base is laid for further stalking activity. And its dynamic is always fascinating for me again. There where we live decent and sane relations, we also have conflicts, and we insult each other and we hurt each other. And when we are somewhere where we are permanently being hurt in a relationship, we leave this relationship and go out. And stalking is exactly the opposite. The stalker is hurt, and the more he's hurt, the more he's attached, and he's deeper the fixation is going, and the stronger the pain becomes, and the stalking intensifies and intensifies. And this is something like a circulus viciosus, because this circle cannot be broken from the inside. You have to enter from the outside to break the stalking circle, which is last point. Stalkers interpret acts differently than other people, and that creates different situations than normally. Stalkers create situations that seem unreal. And again, women have come and said, I've told him again and again, go away, Silna, go, you have to leave me. And the stalker interpreted, oh, she's yelling at me. she's got to love me. She has emotions for me. So the stalker interprets it completely differently than the stalked person is trying to say. That's another typical aspect of stalking. That there's a lot of anger, and stalkers usually, or very often, misinterpret general human interactions and misinterpret, and that makes it very difficult again, because we as therapists have to rely on what we are told, and we get told interpretation, and we have to find out whom can I trust, whom can I believe, who's telling me the truth, or is he just telling me what he thinks or she thinks the truth is. And the stalked person who wants help, who wants to be listened, gets into great trouble, because she finds, usually women, usually find that she does not get the support that she needs. What can we do? We find that it's income related. Society splitting up, societies under stress within the families, also already under the given situation. It's becoming more and more difficult to lead a normal life, and that makes incidents of stalking and domestic violence rising, and the figures that we know prove this. And we're talking about a lot of problem situation on a lot of different levels, and actually we're also talking about chances about them. What I can give you at this moment, we're actually still, we're right in the middle of this crisis, and we don't quite know where you're going.
We also have to see that with all the dark sides of Corona, there also have been some positive sides. So we learned a lot of things. Digitalization went ahead in huge steps. Schools and daycare centers, they improved with technology a lot. All of us learned a lot. And we all learned to communicate using new technologies and new ways, and to come together and find a new solidarity. And I still think that even though it looked like it would all break down in the beginning, that even though there was a lockdown, we came together and we went through this, and a lot of new things got started, and we found new ways. And I am really convinced that Corona will give us a lot of new things on our way, and a lot of things to learn about learning things and about how to handle technology. And I am really convinced that we really should use the chance that, or the opportunity that Corona is providing to us, but we must never forget that we can leave nobody behind, and we have to communicate that we will leave nobody behind, and we can never accept that women live in fear in their own homes. And we also have to take care that families are supported and can still function financially and in their care work. And that's a social responsibility that we all share. And so people who need help, we have to take care to also help those people who need help. And yeah, it's worthwhile to be there for other people, and maybe right now even more than it was before. So these are the impulses that I want to share. Thank you very much for the attention. And I am happy to be of service for questions and answers right now. Yeah, great. The great applause we have to imagine right now. But in the chat, I also have a lot of positive feedback for you. So thank you very much. And yeah, I found it very interesting. And it's a very differentiated view of the problem that we, I think, as a society didn't see as much and like to ignore. And it's one of the many things that came up also because of Corona. And you said that the thing about the rollback of sexes or gender roles, yeah, we don't really have a question from the audience, but because you said that it's 51.8% of single parents that now have increased problems. So I can just sign that from our side. Two talks by female speakers fell away because they couldn't handle the situation about their care for their kids. So this year, this gets more and more clear. Yeah, I believe that. And especially the statistics, it also showed how people feel about that, especially single parents feel about that. And that such a huge percentage says that it's a very heavy burden, but it also tells that, well, yeah, you might think the others don't see it as a burden, but I guess they still see it as a burden, and also a bigger burden than it was before. But maybe they just say, yeah, I still have a good network and I'll just make it. But I'm certain it's still a great burden for everyone and for all the families. And 48% say it's a very big burden. So for me, that means I'm nearly burnt out. So I'm gonna look for a therapist soon. And I think that's a surprising number, that really so many people break down and say, I can't do this anymore. Yeah, then we also come back to what you said earlier with the prognosis for the murders or manslaughters, or maybe even suicides. Yeah, we have Christmas approaching, and depending on how it will continue, well, I already accepted that I'll probably stay here for Christmas and not with my family. Yeah, interestingly, the pathologist with a podcast that many people here might know also gave an interview recently and said that in his work right now, he actually has to do with suicides that he never knew before. So the people, they were afraid of Corona and killed themselves. Well, they were afraid of Corona or of the things that follow Corona or the issues that would happen. So people don't kill themselves because of cancer or heart attacks. That never happened before. But right now, people are so fearful because of Corona that they even enter suicide, which is a very new phenomenon. And I personally cannot really grasp that and understand that. But that's definitely something that has to be studied by science in a longer term. So we really have new phenomena, and as a society, we really have to keep a focus on that. Yeah, I have a few more questions. You said earlier that stalking increased. A question to that. I think that's very counterintuitive, because basically people they are in their safe home, and a stalker, at least in my understanding, the people who are outside of this inside, they are outside. Intuitively, I would have said that the more outside you are, the more attack surface you provide to people who you can meet outside. Do you have an explanation how staying inside can still lead to an increase? Yeah, so stalking basically is a psychological phenomenon and has not much with the home as a place. It has not much to do with the home as a place. What you described is a safety or security that people usually don't feel, because they know I'm sitting at home and he knows that I'm here. So if I have my light on, then he can stand down there and he sees that I'm home. So yeah, most of the people, they see it differently, because it's known where they are. They cannot distract themselves, and of course he cannot follow me permanently, but now he doesn't have to, because he can just stand in front of my front door, and with a high percentage he can be sure that I'm there. And of course there's also technology. There is so many more options in social media and so on, and the stalkers, they are also sitting at home and have plenty more time. And that's of course another factor that increases the phenomenon. So they find new ways to increase the stalking as well. At least the cases that we are confronted by, I'm pretty sure that there are cases where it became less bad, but those are not coming to us. Yeah. I thought about the way the stalkers might think, because they know where the victim is. Why do you have to go there? Because you know where they are anyways. But that may be not how they think. And also shows that it can be quite different than one would expect. Another question we still have. The question was via the form, the online form. What was the worst case of a stalker that you know personally? So the case, and what methods were used, and how long did it take to identify the stalker? And I will add, to hopefully end the whole ordeal. So one of the worst cases I know, that was when I was working with the police, and it was such that it for me was a key moment to understand that, yeah, I have to found SOS stalking, because it can't go on like this. It was domestic violence, where a man was beating his wife for years, or tortured her badly with eruptions of violence. She had deathly fears and lost consciousness, and that over years. And she repeatedly tried to break out, but didn't succeed. Finally, she did succeed. In the middle of the night, she ran away in her nightgown, barefoot, ran to the police, and managed to escape that way. And then she went to a woman's house, so a German institution for escaping women. But he managed to find her there and tortured her and followed her there, and managed to get her back into the house for a last talk, which is horrible, of course, because statistically that's the point where the most murders happen. And he lured her back and strangled her, and she tried to get away, and he tried to talk her into it. But I don't want to be with you. And he strangled her with her shawl. So she lost consciousness, and she had so little oxygen that she almost died. But then she did wake up again, and he hunted her through the whole house, to the whole flat, and he shouted into the area. So she fell from the second floor, so in a height where it's 50-50 if you survive or not, and she was leaning out of the window screaming for help. She was letting herself out of the window backwards, holding onto the window, and he, with extreme violence, hit her in the face, so she lost consciousness and fell down. She fell on her feet, broke the feet, her legs, hit the ground with the back of her head, lost consciousness, went into a coma. He pulled her back up 2 floors on the head, on her hairs. So he saw her as dead, and he called the firefighters and let it look like a suicide. And we went to the hospital, and for us it looked like a like attempted suicide because we had no other points. But then she woke up. Nobody expected that she would wake up, and we thought she would rather die than wake up. But she did wake up and told the first nurse that she met, and she told the nurse, it wasn't myself, it was my husband. So then we took him into custody and really researched it, and then we found a lot of things what he did over the years. He was really sadistic, and he had fun and lust about torture. And to hear that directly from the woman, and I visited her in the emergency room, and over the course of many days I took her statement, and we had to be careful not to overwhelm her and to see the whole process as she tells you the story, and she realizes that she almost died and that this person tried to kill her. That's something I still can't forget till today. Yeah, that's very understandable. That's a very horrible story. So yeah, it's not a story, it's a tragic human life. And that's a really long time. It's very close, it's hitting close to. And with Corona and everything that's still to come, I hope that this does not happen to many more people, but that, yeah, that with a good, helpful networking and a social helping, we can take care of each other and ask people, hey, are you okay? So we can hopefully keep this from happening. Well, Sandra, thank you very, very much. And especially through this story in the last minute, or this last few minutes, I think our viewers have a good idea why you started SOS Stalking. So thank you a lot for that as well. And the best of luck for the future and for the next few months. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for being here. Yeah, I really liked it. And for you too, good luck with everything. And I'm looking forward to next year. Yeah.